How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 1 of What If Deku Had White Flames. And before I start this What If off, I would like to ask all of you to comment your What If suggestions down in the comments section, as I really enjoy reading them, and I might even make them into one of my What Ifs. So now, let's begin. Izuku would be born into the Todoroki family as the twin brother of Shoto Todoroki, and I will be referring to Shoto Todoroki as just Todoroki. Izuku would be born with all white hair, while Todoroki would be born with half red and half white hair. And as Endeavor saw Izuku's white hair, he would just think, oh great, another useless brat who just has an ice quirk. Endeavor would make that assumption because the past two children he had that had white hair just had plain old just ice quirks and maybe a tad bit of a useless fire quirk mixed into it. However, when he saw Todoroki, he would smile. This was going to be his successor, as he used the assumption of hair to deem what their quirks were going to be. However, he was wrong about what Izuku's quirk was going to be, and was somewhat right about what Todoroki's quirk was going to be. And as Izuku would age through the years until he turned 4, Izuku would end up growing attached to his mother, as he would never really see his father Endeavor, as Endeavor was just preparing for Todoroki to start training after he went to the Quirk doctor's office. He was prepared to just continue training Todoroki for years, and just completely cast aside Izuku, thinking nothing of him. He was just going to be someone useless, like all the rest of his children, especially the one who ran away. So, Izuku would end up growing more attached to his mother, as she would end up hating how Todoroki was. Todoroki looked a lot like Endeavor, and she would end up thinking he was just going to become a carbon copy of Endeavor, just with different hair. And so she ended up growing attached to Izuku and would end up hating how Todoroki ended up becoming. So at the age of 4, Todoroki and Izuku would be taken to the Quirk doctor's office, as they would immediately be put in a room because of Endeavor's high status. So when they would sit down, the doctor would tell them they have good news and bad news. Young Todoroki here has a half fire, half ice quirk, while Izuku, who I'm presuming is Todoroki's twin brother by the looks of this paperwork, is, sadly we couldn't find out a quirk. We're not sure if he's quirkless or not, but there is a very well chance he has a quirk. There's, I'd say, 75% chance. We just couldn't identify it. And when we can't identify quirks, there's always a chance they're quirkless. But I would say Izuku here should develop his quirk anytime soon, along with Todoroki. We'll just have to wait until he develops it. As Endeavor would stand up scoffing, thinking, oh, wow, he's even more useless now. He's most likely quirkless, too. As they would go home, Endeavor would grab Todoroki's arm and would pull him into the training room. From that point forward, then, Todoroki and Izuku were best of friends. They'd hang out and play together all the time. However, from there, Todoroki would end up becoming even more distanced from Izuku. Todoroki could never play with the other kids. He would envy Izuku's life, because Izuku would be able to go out and play whenever he wanted, while Todoroki would have to be kept inside training because of his father's dream to surpass All Might. So Izuku would not have any attention from his father, while getting all of his attention from his siblings and his mother. So Izuku would end up going on through this life, as Endeavor would look down upon him, thinking he was just a quirkless brat and a loser, and that's what a lot of kids in his school thought too. He had been the last of his class to even get or generate their quirk, or make their quirk appear, as all of the rest of the students had their quirks appear while his had not yet surfaced. He had never even used or seen what his quirk could be, never even heard of what it could be either. So while all of the other kids were messing around with their quirks at the age of 4, 5, and 6, Izuku was left without that. He didn't have a quirk, and that's what a lot of people thought. However, this was severely mistaken. So when Izuku turned 7, he would end up just thinking, great, I'm not going to have a quirk and I'll never be able to become a hero. So, a couple months after his birthday, he would end up being taken into a room with Endeavor and Todoroki, as Endeavor would tell Todoroki this is the perfect chance for him to train on self-defense. Well, not self-defense, just combat in general. He is going to be practicing his quirk on Izuku. Now, remember, Todoroki or Endeavor does not like Izuku at all. He's just a quirkless brat and just a disappointment and dishonorable child to the Todoroki name. So, Endeavor just thought, oh great, it doesn't matter if he disappears, he's probably quirkless anyway. So, Todoroki would be forced to use his quirk on Izuku. He didn't like this, but he was forced to, he could have gotten punished severely by Endeavor. So Izuku would be getting beaten on by his own brother, as Todoroki would slam his fist into Izuku multiple times, as flames would be around Todoroki's fist, basically a fire punch that Todoroki had been working on with his father, as Todoroki would end up punching Izuku very hard in his shoulder, which would end up leaving a scar. And this was it. Izuku had had enough. From being bullied by people in school to now being bullied at home. This was something he couldn't take, as he would then stand up, launching Todoroki off of him, as Izuku's eyes would then go completely blank, as white flames would then start to form around his eyes, a soulless flame. It had nothing into it, and it was just like a void you could look into. It was memorizing, as Izuku would launch himself right at Todoroki, using basically the exact same technique, except his flames were almost thousands of times hotter than Todoroki's flames. So Izuku would punch Todoroki right in the chest, as Todoroki would just be launched into a wall, breaking that wall and being sent into a bedroom, as Endeavor would look on in shock, as Izuku would then look over at him, flying himself or launching himself towards his own father, and would start trying to punch him. However, Endeavor had enough training to the point where he could easily dodge Izuku's attacks. Remember, Izuku is only a child, and this mere rage wasn't going to stop Endeavor at all. However, Izuku would graze Endeavor, as white flames would then go up around his arms, scarring it in sort of a spiral pattern, as Endeavor would be able to put it out, but would be in complete shock. He wasn't able to control Izuku's flames at all, and Izuku's flames felt so much hotter than his. Perhaps Izuku had potential, and more potential than he thought. He could possibly even have more potential than Todoroki, since Izuku had no training at all and beat Todoroki in a single punch. As Todoroki would then get up, his shirt completely gone, having burned off, as a massive scar would be on his chest, looking much like the scar around his eye. Now, Izuku had enough. On his 6th birthday, his mother had poured boiling water over Todoroki's eye, and now she had been gone for around a year and a couple months. So without the love of his mother and having to be basically raised by his siblings, he had had enough of all this crap going on around him and just wanted for it all to stop. So this would cause him to go into the blind rage that he did. So Endeavor would hopefully knock Izuku out, which he did, basically as humanely as possible, not wanting to hurt Izuku too much, as remember, it's Endeavor. He's the number 2 hero, and if he wanted to, he could hospitalize or even kill Izuku, but he didn't want anything like that. So Izuku would be knocked out, as he would go over to look at Todoroki, who was also knocked out from the punch, as Endeavor would see the scar around his arm and Todoroki's chest. Seeing how powerful Izuku's flames were, Todoroki and Endeavor, or not Todoroki and Endeavor needed to train Izuku, as Endeavor now knew Izuku had a lot of potential, and these flames could possibly surpass himself too. They possibly could have already surpassed him. So from that point on, Izuku would be trained with Todoroki and Endeavor. However, a new sparked hatred would form in Todoroki. Todoroki, who used to be best of friends with Izuku, started to grow a hatred towards him. He had just gotten destroyed by Izuku, and now there is a massive scar on his chest. He already hated the scar on his face as it reminded him of his mother, someone he loved dearly, and now there was a scar on his chest. It was not his day or life. So Todoroki hated Izuku. Izuku had the best of life, and now he's intruding on his. Todoroki had all the attention from his father. Sure, he hated training, but now there's someone barging into it. And something his father talked about how useless and quirkless Izuku was, this caused Todoroki's mind to start being twisted by how how Endeavor talked and spoke, and how Endeavor acted. And this would start to form into Todoroki, and this could possibly lead to the wrong path later on in Todoroki's life, but that wouldn't really matter. So when both of them turned 15, they would be put into just another test for all of the kids who were particularly special. I can't remember the name of the test, but it's something that I just can't remember. But there was a test like how Momo was in it and Todoroki was in it in canon. However, Izuku's also going to be in it. And Izuku would end up being put in a city with 3 0-pointers and loads of other robots around. They had no explanation to this. They were just put in the city. This was a special test for them, and they were supposed to be able to beat this on their own. They are thought to be a lot smarter and shouldn't have any directions from them. I mean, Momo is a part of a very rich and successful family, while Izuku and Todoroki are a part of the Todoroki family. They are a hero family, so they should be able to do this with ease. So Izuku would jump into action using his white flame power, putting it around his hands and slamming his fists into the robots as he would catch fire, burning the metal as it would then just be burned into a liquid. Izuku's flames were so hot that it could burn a metal and just completely destroy it, liquidize it, as it would be melted into this liquid. As Izuku would be very, very dangerous because of this. If you were anywhere close to Izuku, his flames, not even touching them, could burn and scar you for life. That's why Izuku needed so much training, to keep the temperature down on his flames, as if he weren't to do this, he could possibly just burn and scar someone, and this would not be too good. I mean, it would be great for fighting villains, but if he were to do this to one of his classmates while fighting them, that would just be horrible and would look very bad for the Todoroki name. So Izuku would be forced to learn how to just regulate the temperature of his fire. But seeing that no one was around, since they would be put in separately, Izuku would go all out, putting his flames to the temperature around the middle. He didn't like when he went to the max temperature of his flames, as he would turn into some sort of mindless being, as he couldn't control that state. Basically, think about it as this. The lower the temperature, the easier the flames are to control. It's like a mode. Say if he's at maybe 100-degree fire, which is very, very low, Izuku would be able to control this with ease. However, if it goes up to something like 1,000 or something like this, it would be insanely hard to control. Now, the metal the robots were made of isn't the strongest material in the world. It's not going to have an insanely high melting point, and it's not going to have an insanely low one either. So say the melting point is around 500 degrees. This isn't like the metal in our world, which I believe it's not like either how to make glass either, which I believe is like 3,000 degrees or something. It's something insane like that. Sure, if Izuku wanted to, he could make glass. So if he was on a beach and he was fighting a villain, if he ends up punching the ground, it would basically materialize into glass. The sand would turn into that, which I don't think that's how it works, but just roll with it, I guess. So Izuku would easily pass this test, burning these robots and melting them down into a liquid, as a cleanup crew would have to go out and clean up all of the metal before they put any more robots in for the next contestant, as it was basically seen as a danger hazard. And that's where I'm going to leave this What If off, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy part 1 of What If Deku Had White Flames. It was pretty enjoyable to make. I mean, it did take me like 7 attempts before I could even get like the first minute down. So, yeah, I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.